Welcome to season 2 of You Are Inevitable podcast. And what we try to do is take a deep dive into what it means to create something deeper in your life. I'm Kathleen Seeley, and that's Natalie, Alexia. And we boast our 60 plus years of combined experience as coaches, trainers, and just sort of livers of life, trying to find our way through the ups and downs. And we're providing you with some resources for your to get more meaning, happiness, success in your life, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff that we all want. It's completely unscripted. As those of you who are on with us every 2 weeks, those of you who listen after, we really appreciate. And if you're one of the listeners who listen in your car or after the fact, please like or subscribe, share it with someone who might benefit from the content. That helps us spread the word. And I mentioned this last time, but we're over 650 followers of our podcast. So it's kind of fun.
Woo!
And right now, Natalie is in Spain. And also at the end of this, and you'll get an email for this, is I'm opening up a few coaching spots, one-on-one coaching spots for people who are interested in spending some time with me. And it can help you kind of finish out the year strong and build the foundation for the new year. If you're interested in that, we'll send you a link to hop on a call with me to talk more about the clarity coaching that I offer. And as always, if you're interested in some business coaching, business development, Natalie is the outstanding business coach for you. But I'm looking to fill a few more spots by the end of the year, and would love to have you. So welcome, everybody. And today, our topic is to talk about values and values alignment. And anyone who knows me knows, this is my jam. Our values underpin everything that we do. And a shout out to Katie B, who said she's not going to make it today, but she has been at every episode. So,
yay!
Anyway, always good to hear your comments. You know, if you ever reply to one of our emails, it comes directly to me, and I can answer any questions or just feel good that you replied. So values, let's get to it. Values really are, they underpin everything that we do. And today we're going to talk about how important it is that we are clear on our values, that we understand values are really beliefs with a punch. And so what that means is we need to always question our beliefs to say, is what I'm believing right now serving me, moving me forward, or pulling me back? So inviting you to consider the importance of understanding your core values and how they really are beliefs, the stories we've told ourselves over and over again that are important to us, and to kind of question the context. And I'll get in a little bit more detail of that in the conversation, I imagine, because I usually do. But, and so talking about how sometimes our beliefs can be outdated, how to question them, and how if we're, I already said this, but if we're really clear on our values, they can guide our choices. And sometimes it's difficult to live your values. Sometimes it causes intense fear, like to speak up in alignment with your values. And sometimes we can question, am I really committed to this? But if we're really clear on what our values are, what they mean to us and what they look like in our behavior, we can make more intentional decisions. You want to say anything to open up, Natalie?
I'll just say hi. I'm calling in from Spain. I have to say, when Kathleen and I discussed this, I said, of course I want to do the podcast, because it's one of my favorite things to do, is to have these awesome conversations with Kathleen and then hear all of the, conversation that happens in the chat from everyone who tunes in live. And then when I saw that we were talking about values, I thought this is even better, because if I have even the tiniest bit of jet lag, we all know that Kathleen is the absolute values expert. So yes, I'm excited to be here and to be a part of this discussion with you, and anticipating that you're going to have all of the gems today.
So basically what she's saying is I'm carrying the load. And because I value responsibility. Okay, so let's just jump in. And again, what I invite everyone to do at the end of this call, or whenever you're feeling inspired to do so, to just kind of list, like, what are 3 top values that are important to you right now? And you don't have to marry them. It's just an exploration. And I'll go through this again at the end so you remember what I'm inviting you to do. But an important thing to do is, like, what is my value? And am I living it on a scale of 1 to 10? 1, not at all, 10 being fully expressed every day. And what's getting in the way? And sometimes it's because we need to examine the belief around the value. Like, am I holding on to a story about that value that's no longer applicable. Again, we don't have to get rid of the value, but we might want to explore our belief, because as we mature, as we have more experience, we add what I call more dimensionality to sort of the word or the value or our experience. And we're able to, as opposed to it being about just us and our experience, from our experience in the world to meaning, who are we and how do we want to express ourselves in the world? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I find myself wondering, and I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm curious to know, if that's present to you as we talk about it. Because as you talk about it, I find it to be present to me. Like, what would I name as 3 values that feel, top of mind and high priority present in my life? And I love that question about how fully am I / are you / is anyone who's listening living them? Do you have yours top of mind, Kathleen?
I have 1 top of mind, and then 2 that just live with me. But what's happening with those 2 is I'm recognizing how I've adapted my belief around them to become more appropriate where I find myself today in my life. So the one value that is really up for me, and probably up for you, but is ease with uncertainty. And I work on always work on trying to stay present to the moment. Am I perfect at it? No. So I do this work, but more just having this sense of things work out in the exact right way. Somebody years ago introduced me to this concept, in the fullness of time. If we give it enough time, we can see why things happen the way that they do. And I'm feeling particularly I notice a particular impatience about certain things having to do with business, things that we've been working on for a long time that I just really want them to come to fruition. And I always say, you can't tug at a carrot and make it grow faster than the carrot's going to grow. You can nurture the soil. So it's been a really good learning experience for me to just sit and allow the unfolding of what's next for me. So that's ease with uncertainty. And then I think I've talked about these 2 before, but it's really, it's a good demonstration for all of you on how to look at core values that follow you wherever you go. My aspirational value, I'm all over the place, is compassion. I've said that many times. I really, what would compassion look like in this situation, rather than reacting in a way that's fear-based? It's like, how can I open my heart and find more compassion? So that's one that runs with me a lot. But in particular, the 2, fairness and safety. And we talked about this before, and I talked about this last week when I was working with a group in Washington, D.C., because everything we teach, we talk about values, but really talking about how we might have had an old belief around something, and it kept us safe. Like, it served us to some degree, and it might not be serving us anymore. And so my examples are, and I would love to hear either in the chat now or reply to an email if you have any thoughts on this, like how, if you look at your belief that you might have had about a value when you were younger, and now I'll use safety. For me, safety, because of an experience I had when I was younger, I am hyper vigilant about my surroundings, and not only just physical surroundings, but I had this belief, or this sort of, a belief system, that people were out to get me for some reason, or they would take advantage of me, not realizing that due to my lack of boundaries, I was responsible for allowing people to take advantage of me. But keeping safe really meant I need to fight you, the world. Okay. I need to lash out. I need to be smarter. I need to be more prepared. I can't ever let them see me sweat. I don't know if anyone out there ever felt that way, but now safety has become more for me how can I create spaces where other people feel safe? And particularly last week, this was really clear when I'm working with a specific team that has some real conflict in the group. And there was I call it a breakthrough moment. I don't know if the participants in the group would see it as a breakthrough moment, but somebody spoke a truth that caused a real reaction. And 2 people in particular in the group kind of struck back, and with a real aggressive response to something someone said. And the thing that person said was really opening up, really vulnerable. And I was waiting for this moment, because I always wait for these breakthrough moments, because then we can really do the real work and talk about what's really going on, as opposed to, oh yeah, all this stuff is really interesting. So what I realized with my own, how can I make it safe for everyone, even the people who became really aggressive, and this went on for about over an hour, this intensity. So I had to just hold my own self grounded, but also creating space where others in the room could feel safe, because this is a pattern in this team where something will come up and it gets threatening, so they just retreat. And I'm like, this is an opportunity to move through it. So my view of safety has gone from me feeling safe in a room and doing everything I can to keep me safe to how can I create safe spaces? So that's the evolution of a value. Long story to explain it, but that's what I mean by, is my old frame of safety working for me? And it wasn't, because I was basically keeping people away. And now that I know I can cope with whatever comes my way, I can cope with, I don't need to bite the hook. My favorite expression from Pema Chodron is, that hook has lost its worm. I don't need to defend or argue or be right in the training room, which is important as a trainer. I could just hold space for that. And I was also living the ease with uncertainty and compassion values. So that's, I don't know. I don't even remember your question, Natalie.
Well, no, my question was, are top of mind your 3 values that, because you posed the question to the audience. And then I always think it's, so interesting to give a little more space to what does this look like in real life when we talk about it. But I just want to say, I think it's really amazing that you shared that, and like very vulnerable to say what safety used to look like. And Holly here is saying in the chat, you're speaking directly into some past fears, some time present, which occasionally stifles me to step out. And I think that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then I just want to say, because obviously I know about the situation in the training room last week, and what a beautiful evolution of that value. Because what you said in the beginning was, these beliefs around values are often there to keep us safe. And I think it's easy to look at parts of ourselves and be like, oh, I don't like that part of myself that doesn't trust people, or I don't like that part of myself that, tries to please everyone or whatever, doesn't think I'm enough. But to actually to have the acceptance that this is a part of me that kept me safe and it did a great job. And now it evolves into, your ability to create safe spaces and hold space in a room where there is very heightened emotion and very heightened conflict, especially in a corporate setting, because I do think that whether we like it or not, we all have this story, heightened emotion doesn't belong there. We must all be very professional and buttoned up all the time, like robots. We must be human and have feelings. And your ability to hold that space for the dialogue, for the conflict, and to support everyone in the room is really unparalleled. And every time I've been in the training room with you recently, and I learn so much from you every single time, watching you facilitate that dialogue piece and really hold the space is incredible. So I love how this is such a beautiful example of how something that maybe, I'm speaking for you, I don't mean to do that, but I think that it would be reasonable to say that someone could judge themselves for like, oh, that was silly, I didn't trust people, and then just saying, look at how this has the potential to blossom into something, into something else. Is it something better? Not necessarily. It's just something else.
It's just, like I'd said earlier, just adding dimensionality, so I have more responses to situations that are stress filled. Like, even like I would have to say, I showed up next level last week because I was even attacked in the room personally, and I didn't engage because I knew, like, it wasn't about me. You caused all of this to come up. No, actually, this was here. I created space for it to come up, but I wasn't part of what you're talking about. And that's really important when we're in tense situations, whether you're in coaching or family dynamics or any of that kind of stuff, to not take it on that everything's about you. And at the same time, everything is about you. So holding that. And then, and then when I came home, it took me a whole day to get home because it's quite a distance, but then I let it kind of flow through me. I was exhausted, but it was a really good, clear example of how I've shifted a value of mine that's been with me my whole life. And like you touched on something, is like, it was part of my identity that served me. And I think Holly touched in on that. And then Lance had a comment. All the safety related comments resonate with me. Hypervigilance, perfectionism held me back until I was finally aware. I still struggle at times. And this is what I love about this work, is we're never there. It's not like, oh, at the end of today, we'll solve this conflict.
Ta-da!
Yeah. No, the whole point is that even these conversations, what we're doing is creating spaces for you to kind of zoom out and say, oh, first of all, no one is one thing. I'm not, you're not. But also, this is just part of a bigger tapestry of my life. And if I can see myself in this moment, if like Lance, you can notice when you become contracted or perfectionism or whatever it is that shows up, you can go, oh, I remember not even recognizing this in myself. And now I can recognize it so I can do something with it. And that's the power.
Yeah. And I just want to say again, because we've been talking for a while here, as simple as it may seem, just bringing awareness to what are those 3 values that are up for me right now, and how fully am I living them on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
And, how are they showing up in my life? Again, it seems so simple, but it can be profoundly powerful, because, you get to feel good about things that, oh yeah, I'm really living into this. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm aligned, which is what we're talking about today. Who I am is aligned with what I value. And then in those areas, inevitably for all of us, where we're thinking, oh, that's not showing up as much as I want it to, or actually, in fact, something I'm doing is in complete opposition or contrast to this value. Like you say, once you can see it, you're not it. Now you get to make a choice, and consciously, navigate your own life. And values are such a powerful way to do that.
Yeah. And, when people are feeling, when I work with them and they're feeling like I'm just frustrated a lot, or I'm anxious, or whatever emotion is showing up, it's a good sign. Most likely, I mean, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but there's something happening around you that's in conflict with your values, or you're in a shift. And, what used to feel good doesn't feel good anymore. It's like, I used to love gossiping. And I love like TMZ and all those gossip shows. I loved that. And I like gossiping. I like hearing stories about people. And now I've shifted. I think about, well, who's defending the person who's not in the room? Who's standing up for that person? So I've sort of seen some maturity. Always no. But I'm just recognizing, wow, if someone is talking about me and I'm not in the room, who's standing up for me? And so how can I be that voice for somebody else? And something I want to say about that top 3 values thing is, when you list a value, the next thing is to explore, what are the beliefs around it? Why does this matter? Like create the story. And when you create the story, then you'll see, what behavior would I be doing if I was living this more fully? Because you have to first of all, get the concept clear, but also what would I be doing, so that when you're doing the doing or not doing it, you can see it more plainly and make a conscious choice. Do I want to live more fully into this value, or am I willing to compromise it? And neither is right. But it's the clarity that can remind us how to stay in alignment with our values, even when we know this is against my values, but we make a calculated decision that this is just the decision I'm making.
So the other thing I want to ask you, and this, I just want to hear you speak to it briefly, is this piece, maybe someone's listening to this, who hasn't heard you speak about values before, and they're thinking, this is a great idea. I'm going to think about my top 3 values. Do your values stay the same for the whole of your life? Like when I'm thinking about my top 3 values, how should I be approaching this?
Well, I mean, I would say yes and no. Like our values are really a product of our needs and our motivations. And so over time, our needs and motivations can change. So our values, what's important to us to get our needs met, may change. But also when I say yes and no, it's like, I've noticed from when I first started working with values and understanding them, at the values tools in 2012, actually 2009. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I noticed those two, fairness and safety, always show up consciously and unconsciously. So I just go, I think that's part of my DNA. That's part of the fabric of who I am. But new things like compassion showed up a number of years ago because I was a jerk. And my jerkness really came out of being afraid. And if I wanted people to be kinder to me, I had to be kinder to me first. And if I wanted people to be kinder to me, I had to find a way to be kinder to them. And so compassion showed up as, this is really good aspirational value for me. But it wasn't because I was a horrible person. I just was run by fear, and I didn't know how to calm my nervous system down, or calm myself down to see that it's not a black and white world. There's so many colors, and the more colors I can see, the more options I have. So I don't have to have that knee-jerk reaction. So do they change over time? Yeah. Like, I'm really thinking about legacy, which wasn't, 5 years ago, even 7 years ago, I would have never thought of wanting to hand something over or retire or change what I do for work or how much I do. And now I'm feeling like, oh, I can see how this stage of my life, I'm feeling like I really want to more mentor and coach and teach leaders how to mentor and coach their team. The work has shifted that I want to do, but our work hasn't shifted. It's like we now have more people who can do it because I want it to live on. So that's legacy. So it changes, but, and I also, there's one other thing, I can't remember who I was talking this to. I think it was maybe the group last week, but our values, when we're in our building up stage of our life, are really around establishing ourselves, our self-esteem, being able to do something good, like, take care of ourselves. And then once we have our foundation sort of met, we then shift into more broader values that are rather than outside in focus, inside out. And and what I've noticed is when people are getting closer to retirement, they kind of shift back to foundational values again. Like finances. How am I going to, take care of myself? What will my relationships be like if I'm not working?
Or for you, how am I going to afford all of these margaritas by a beautiful pool in the sunshine, whilst I'm relaxing?
I mean, that's really the end game, the goal. Yeah. So yeah.
I just want to highlight what you said, because I think it bears repeating, even though this is not specifically about values. I like what you said. When I realized about compassion, I realized I had to give compassion to myself, to be able to give compassion to others. And I just think that that's so true in my own experience. I don't know, for me, it's compassion, but for me, it took the form more of acceptance. Like, for me to be more accepting of others. I know that it was a journey to need to be more accepting of myself for as long. And, there was a long period of time where I was hypercritical of myself. And it's still the place that I can go to, like you say, on a good day, I'm not hypercritical of myself. When the sun is shining and I just arrived in Spain yesterday and I'm here with my friend and I'm going to go out for dinner with my dad. Today, I don't feel hypercritical of myself. But, on a day where I have an argument with someone I care about, the dog throws up on the carpet, all of these things, it's definitely a place I can go back to. But I noticed that acceptance, compassion, these things, in order to have that capacity to give, I do believe that we're the first person we need to give them to.
Yeah. And that's not easy, right? Like, it's just not easy to do.
No.
But, and sometimes we learn by doing it for others, to see, oh, there's something in this, take my advice. I'm not using it right now. You should really love and accept yourself. Oh, maybe I should try that for a day or even 5 minutes, So this is really about value alignment and why they matter. And I can talk about a little bit later why they matter in relationships. I made a note of that, but I want you, Natalie, to talk a little bit about, like, what are some clues we can pay attention to in our body's response when we're out of alignment with our values, like when we're not living in alignment with those things that are important to us.
I love this. So years and years ago, I read the quote, and I wish I remember who said it. I'm sorry, I don't. But they said, your body often knows before your mind does. And I just thought, sometimes you read things and it just resonates so deeply as truth, or that's my experience of it anyway. I actually remember that the very first time I cracked The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, who many of us know. And I remember reading it and just thinking, oh, this just feels so much like truth. And when I read that statement, the body is so wise, it often knows before the mind does. I thought, that's so true. And but I didn't know why. And I think as I have delved more deeply into understanding the wisdom that resides in the body, what I know is that our mind is so brilliant at being very, very busy and thinking our way out of situations.
Yep.
When we are in something that isn't in alignment with our values, and that could look like a lot of things. It could look like a friendship, it could look like an intimate relationship, it could look like being in a work position, either working specifically with one individual or working for a company as a whole. It could look like a million different things. I think that we can always come up in our mind with a million reasons why, this is actually a good idea.
Yeah.
Here's all the things I love about this person, or here's all the ways that, me and this person have had fun together, or here are all the, very important, let's not discount external benefits of keeping a job. I have a good pay and benefits and these things, but the body will tell us. I believe that everything from subtle signs, like everyone, I think, can relate to this feeling of, I don't know if I really trusted that person. Something about them just didn't feel right. We usually feel that in the body. It's like my body felt uncomfortable, or I found myself pulling back.
Mm-hmm.
I had this kind of churning in my gut, so we get those like subtle clues.
Yeah.
And then the more sort of somatic work I do, and the more somatic coaching I'm doing with others, the more I'm even finding that specific things that show up in the body. I had a client recently that has a lot of back pain, and funnily enough, when we went into what they wanted to work on, a lot of the part of the body that was calling their attention was in the back. And so I think someone said here, dis-ease, Holly has said, dis-ease, if we cram it together, says disease. I can speak today, I really can. So I think it's everything. I think this lack of alignment, when something is pushing up against one of our values, meaning, there's signs that maybe this isn't the right path for us in whatever that is, anything from this doesn't feel right somehow in the body, to pay attention to that, to even, I can think of times for myself where I've done different types of healing work over the years, and remember this feeling, like the first time I did forgiveness work, I literally felt like somebody lifted 100 pounds off my shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, my posture changed,
Yeah.
Because I've been carrying this weight, living in a way that wasn't in alignment, and suddenly it was gone. So that's my answer to the body. I think is very wise, and I think if we pay attention to the body, it has many clues for us around what being in alignment and not being in alignment feel like.
Yeah, taking it from the self-noticing piece, and your body can give you clues, and also recognizing when you're living out of alignment with your values, or you make choices that may be out of alignment with your values. It's not about hating on yourself and saying, oh, there I go again. It's like, I wonder, get curious, and like, what was going on for me that I sort of lost my self-agency in that situation? What was I hoping to gain? And because we do things for a reason, and if we can find the reason, we can decide if we want to carry on or not. And sometimes we do, right? Sometimes we choose to engage in things that might not be in alignment with our value, but if we're aware of it, that's the power's in the awareness. I think that's my headline there. So it's a self-awareness. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to cut you off mid-thought, so
no, I've got it clear. I know what my thought.
Okay. So I think we've given big examples, like, what does it look like to live out of alignment with your values, maybe in the body? What does it look like? Big examples, things in life that are off track. Maybe we make decisions. I agree with you. What was I hoping to get out of this? Do I want to continue to do this, whether it's for the next, 24 hours, 1 month, 1 year, however long you decide it's a choice. But I think that there's an interesting conversation to be had here around what about the smaller moments? And one of the things was, how do we navigate conversations? And I think this is something that most of us living in the world today come across when there's a values rub in a conversation. What's your thoughts on that?
So that kind of goes into what I was thinking of talking about next is really our values connect us, our beliefs can divide us. So this is how we take it outward in relationship. And what I don't know if this is what you're thinking about or that question is a question, but I think about when somebody sees the world differently than me, I say to myself, no one is one thing because I'm not one thing and they're not one thing. We may not see this thing the same way, but there's other things we can connect on. And I work hard at going there. And also, so that's one thing, but also when there's a tenseness in an exchange, I don't know if you're talking about sort of the micro opportunities we have in a day, like the tenseness in an exchange that I can think in my head, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Or how could you be like, are you kidding me? And then I catch myself and I go, wow, look at you, little miss. Like, don't you know it all? But what I consciously try to do is become more curious. Can you tell me more about that? And, I really, if I'm in a particularly heated discussion where there's real opposing views happening or just something that's completely out of alignment with what I want to be a part of, I can sometimes just check out. Like I can, but if I'm feeling grounded in myself, I can really get more curious. And I always wonder, like, what happened that created this perspective? Because it's just a perspective in the other person. And I really did that last week because the one person who just sort of shared the truth that was just hanging in the room for a long time and wasn't ever said, it was a very difficult thing to do. And then the attack that came from two people and the silence in the others. So just watching the whole dynamic of the room, it's a small group of people, so I can pay attention to it all. It's like, what happened in your life that is your first response? So I try to, that's how I can calm myself in those tense situations. Cause I know it's nothing to do with me. It's nothing to do with me. Like I show up in rooms where people don't like me all the time, not like because I'm there to create an uncomfortable space. So I get why their story is, well, you feel like a threat to me. Totally get it. That's okay. But if you got to know me, I'm not a bad person, but it's not about that. So I have to really kind of put that aside. But it's like, what happened? Like when this person said the thing, the other person said, I'm going to take you down, and pointed and yelled. And it's like, wow, like something happened out of this context that is your first response. And how can I can see this so clearly. It happened a number of times, but this was so clear. How can I create a space for that person to get curious, to say, yeah, what happened? And what did I bring that shouldn't have been here? And that's an invitation. Like the two more aggressive people might choose to say, basically, screw you. This is dumb. Which one said this is total bullshit, waste of time? Okay. Yeah, it could be. It's possible. But what happened to you that is what comes out of you? And you've heard me a million times say, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out? It's orange juice. And I'll say to people, apple juice. And they look at me like I'm crazy. No, orange juice. Why? Because it's an orange. Because that's what's inside. So what happened in that room was it was a pressure cooker and they were squeezed, and what's inside is what comes out. So now we can see it. The people who withdrew, I go into flight. I go into fight. Flight, fight, freeze. Yeah. Yeah. So it's an opportunity.
Bingo.
But it's like, yeah, it's if we are willing to look at ourselves, especially in those moments where we're not our best self, and give that grace to others. I felt if we had one more day, unfortunately it was 2 hours left in the last day, we can really do some good work now because it's up. But you have to be willing to look at it and say, okay, what about me was afraid? So go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's so, I just want to acknowledge that it's so hard when we have a different worldview to someone else, or we have a story or an expectation about how things should be. And I have personal experience of it taking everything inside of me from a self-control perspective to use those 3 magic words. Can you tell me more about that? Tell me more. Because what I really want to say, the situation I'm thinking of is about a year ago, my eldest daughter said to me, we were talking about her going to school, to university, college, if you're American. And she's 23 and she did not go straight to college. For a number of reasons. And we brought up the conversation, and she'd been looking at different things and exploring and all these things. And she announced to me about a year ago that she did not want to go to college. And everything inside my body wanted to say, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Here are all the reasons why you should go. Let me tell you how this will benefit your life. Like all of these things, because I'm a parent. And I have hopes and dreams for her to have a comfortable, good life. I make up a story that there are certain things she needs to do in order for that to be the case. And I have her best interests at heart. And, I'm older and I think I know better than her, whether I do or not. And in that moment, taking that self-control and taking a breath and just saying, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be curious when we don't agree with someone's perspective on something or we see the world different from them. But it's so powerful because if we can take that breath and be willing to ask the question, and I want to say now, suddenly the Anatomy of Peace is coming back into my head, which is a great book if anyone hasn't read it, by the Arbinger Institute, where they talk about a heart at war or a heart at peace. And I always think about that in those moments. Can I ask this question? Tell me more, with a heart at peace instead of a tell me more.
Yeah. And in those moments, what is happening when you have the awareness, it's like, what's happening right now? I like this, I don't like this. And what do I want? And what do I want often can be aligned to your values. And is what I'm about to do going to get me closer to or further from? And in our lives, like what's true is nothing actually needs to change, right? It's gotten us this far. But when we're willing to self-reflect and be curious about ourselves and others, we can broaden how we see the world. And we can broaden, and it's not about watering down a value. It's that we can broaden the perspective so we can hold space for more people and we aren't as threatened by an opposing view. Or because really what's happening for you with your daughter is you just want her to be safe and you want her to be successful. You want her to be, and yelling at her might not get you there. So it takes a lot of awareness to stop. And it's the long way. And the long way, I mean, why not? You're here anyway. You may as well try to get closer to what you want.
Yes. And I think what the gift in this situation, just to complete the loop for anyone listening, was what ended up coming up when we got into that discussion was some pretty significant fear related to things that had happened in the past, in connection with schooling. And we were then able to talk about that. And I'm not going to pretend that it changed her mind in that moment, because it didn't.
Right.
But now I had more information. And I can, what do you say? You can't fix a secret.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I had more information. And also, I think, and maybe many of us as parents relate to this, is that sometimes the harder you push, the more resistance there can be. And so having the self-control in the moment to not only be able to ask, tell me more, but then the information actually helped us get to where we've gotten to a year later. She is not my decision, her decision, decided to go back to school.
And what you did is you created safety outside of yourself, because the safety on yourself is like, I want my daughter to be safe, blah, blah, blah. But the safety, you shifted from your self perspective to the other and made it safe for her to explore it and hear herself. And that's the ease with uncertainty, is like, we're just gardeners. We're just planting seeds. We don't know which ones are going to pop, which ones are going to go dormant, which ones aren't even fertile. I don't know if that's the right word to use with gardening, because I'm not a gardener. That was the extent of my gardening. But it's like, this life of ours is a long game. And so wouldn't I love to know the last chapter? I would love to know. But if I knew the last chapter, then there wouldn't be any point of me learning and growing and figuring out myself more. And my own journey of self-discovery really sort of fast-tracked when I started to be more curious about other people. So again, when we're talking about values, to circle back to sort of the start of this, it's really, if I can understand my values really are an expression of my needs and motivations. That's really what they are, what's up with me right now. And if we aren't clear on them, we can make choices and decisions that may or may not work out in our favor, but we feel stress and tension. When we are clear on our values, and even if we compromise our values, the awareness in and of itself reduces the stress in it, because at least I'm conscious of it. I'm not like, how did that happen again? How did I find myself in this situation again? We're like, oh, I know how. I can trace it back. So the awareness is power. So, exploring those values, and it's this kind of a constant calibration of our behavior, and again, creating more dimensionality in our responses, more emotional variability. So we don't, like, my goal with this team is for the people that struck out, like attack, how can we create more options? And for the people that stood back, how can we create more options for how to engage, and how to engage differently when something is said that was a truth, by the way, in my opinion, from what I know, but how can we sort of look at it without it becoming us, and saying, who collectively do we want to be? And to do that, we have to recognize our responses, our beliefs, and what's happening. So the whole point of this is really about getting clear on your values. And if you find that useful, and then explore the beliefs you hold around it. Why is that important? And is that belief serving me today? Is it an old story? Could I revise it a little bit? Could I add more color and dimension to my story and see what happens differently in my life? And what would it look like? And then notice your body when you're feeling triggered, or when you're feeling aligned in that sort of, and that can be clues. So that's my final thought, Natalie. How about you?
I find myself thinking about how you always say it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I love about values as a concept for us to understand ourselves and others better is that they're so simple. I can think about easily, I value family. I do. It's so important to me. I too, when you said earlier, ease with uncertainty, that's definitely one that's challenging me at the moment to live into. Humor and fun. It's so simple to think about these things. And then the not easy part is, how do I integrate more of what I value into my life? Where am I challenged? Where are things rubbing up against my values? And even the other piece, in this simple but not easy is, well, when I'm faced with a conversation where someone is rubbing up against one of my values, whether it's through worldview or whether it's through expectation or story that I've created myself, it can sound simple to say, could you tell me more about that? But it's not easy in the moment, usually, because what happens, just to go back to that body piece for a moment, is that when someone is rubbing up against one of our values, which is coming from a place of sharing a different worldview or not being in alignment with our story or expectation, our nervous system is probably going into fight. I need to tell this person they're wrong. Freeze. I need to shut down. Flight. I need to exit this conversation quickly. And so we are, in some ways, trying to fight against our physiology to move into a space of curiosity. So anyway, that's my takeaway.
And those responses are coming from, we've talked about this before, prediction, past experiences. So if you can catch yourself, you can recognize, oh, what's happening right now? I'm like a 60-year-old woman. I'm not 13, or, I'm not 30 and someone ripped me off. Right now, that's not it. So by just getting present to the moment, saying what's really happening around me, at the very least, I can add more texture to my story because I'm noticing it's a different context. But we go through this so like on autopilot that we forget to question, oh, even if that was yesterday, today's a new day. This is a new minute. I can broaden. So that's the call, everybody. And yeah, so this was fun. I appreciate you hopping on.
It was fun. And I don't want to leave without saying, just for those of you listening, you will be getting an email shortly. Kathleen, as she mentioned at the beginning of this, is opening up her last few coaching spots of the year. And she is, as you all know who are here listening, an incredible coach. And this is just a great way for anyone who's looking to get clarity and momentum towards the end of the year and momentum into the new year. I personally think, the fall or October is a great time for reflection and rejuvenation, especially before we head into the madness that will be the end of the year, so that we make sure that we start 2025 strong. So if you've been thinking about doing some coaching or getting all of your ducks in a row before the end of the year, keep your eyes open for that email that should be hitting your inbox shortly.
And here's a heads up, there's no rows.
Yeah.
But thank you. And thanks everybody for showing up again. And those of you listening later, share this with anyone that you think might enjoy our rambling conversations. It's so much fun. We have 2 more coming, and then we're going to wrap for 2024, but it's been a blast. And have a fun time with your friend in Spain. And everybody out there, appreciate you. And thanks for spending the time with us.
Yes, thank you everyone. This is awesome.
All right. Bye.
Bye.